Hello, my name is James T. Wood, and I'm a recovering pastor. This is the story of what that means. On December 15th, 2019, I wrote the very first words of my very first spoken word poem. I'm a recovering pastor and vagabond prophet, a subversive in the service of love, a philosopher, poet, and stoned theologian sauntering the shore of this cosmic ocean, hoping for a better story to tell, a more beautiful question to dwell within. One day at a time, addicts say, to make it just one day more, ever, only, always, all we have. One day. Wild and precious. My friend, Star Shepherd Decker, gave me the advice that I needed to grieve the loss of my career as a pastor. Star and I met at the 2019 Spark Women's Empowerment Conference, where I was one of 3 men in the audience. I got to be there because Rachel O'Rourke invited me to coach her speakers. I got to coach her speakers because I got to coach Rachel at the Van Talks local TED Talks style event in Vancouver, Washington. And it's through coaching, through speaking, through storytelling that I was trying to find these threads of what it meant to be a pastor and apply it to non-pastor life. If you haven't been in the church, being out of the church is disorienting, especially when the support systems and structures that you had come to rely on that were so powerful, so embracing, when you sat around the same potluck table and communion table, and they're absent when you have ideas that are outside of what they consider to be okay. After the 2016 election, I needed to make clear to my church and leadership where I was preaching that I believe that Jesus taught us to love everyone, no exceptions. On January 3rd, 2020, I wrote another stanza. A pastor recovering from the shock of the loss of a flock once, the place and people that taught that all are loved, and I believed their words. Preaching practice persuaded me not to see the gap between words and deeds. Privilege, position, permitting perpetual purblindness until the tectonic plates of privilege shifted, placing me outside the bounds of love. Awakened by death to the lives it took to buy my ignorance, ashamed by hate masquerading as hope for the least and lost, always kept in their places, cautionary tales. Me, having to walk away from the flock, once the place and people that taught that all are loved, but they couldn't see it applying to an LGBT community. Sin personified and hated, Jesus' core commands negated to comply with the text they can't be bothered to read. Fuck that noise. I'ma love them anyway. Love hard, love strong, love true. It's all summed up in love. Jesus said, I love you too, just for you being you. Crickets, like locusts, sing the invitation song to an empty field, deflocked, my frock flapping in the wind, alone me wondering what sermon remains to change the tune and who remains to see a broken preacher teaching the abundance of love. See, even as I walked away from my church work, I found places like coaching at Van Talks where I got to use my skills in storytelling, in speaking, in communicating, and in grappling with truth to help people unlock their own truths, their own stories, their own meaning, not by skating over the easy parts, but by doing the work. Doing what my friend Star recommended that I do, grieving. And it's a thing that I started to learn from another powerful, brilliant woman, Dr. Brené Brown. In her research on shame and vulnerability, and her TED Talk where she says it is impossible to selectively numb emotion. And that began for me the path out. As I started to learn that the wisdom was always there, the wisdom that I needed to show me how to do what Jesus said, even if the church couldn't do it with me. But I couldn't hear it because my ears were too stopped up with my masculine conditioning, my traditional conditioning, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't until I started to do things like look at the story of Genesis through the lens of Brené Brown's research on shame and notice that they were naked and unashamed, and then they were ashamed, and then the conversation with the Lord when they hid in their shame. And that Dr. Brown in her research makes it so clear that we desperately need to shed light on our shame, to be vulnerable in our shame, to be able to connect with each other as people. And if we don't do that, we don't have connection. And we defend that pain, that hurt, that shame within us through blaming and externalizing practices. And lo and behold, the next story just happens to be externalizing and blaming and shaming. And we see it getting worse. And I started to see the wisdom of the Bible, how to do what Jesus said, once I began extricating myself from the systems of the church. Irony of ironies. It was another brilliant woman, storyteller, Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, in her book, Women Who Run with Wolves, who helped me to grapple with what grieving looks like and how myth and story is our heritage of how to grieve. And this lined up the things for me that I had learned, but didn't know, didn't internalize. I had in my head, but they weren't connected to my heart. Things like that in the Psalms, they have Psalms of orientation, like the first Psalm, blessed is the one who does not stand in the counsel of the wicked or sit in the way of sinners or stand, sit, lie down in the seat of mockers. I memorized it a long time ago. But it's just the way things are is the way things are. And then there's Psalms of disorientation. Probably the most famous of this is the 22nd Psalm Jesus quoted on the cross. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? It is this utter disorientation. And the Psalms of reorientation, the 23rd Psalm. Yea, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And in these ancient songs, we as people learn to sing with our voices, to feel in our bodies the movements of grief. And Dr. Estes showed me. She names it in her book, Women Who Run with Wolves, the clan of the scar. Those who have learned the howl of grief. And that is the story structure that I had been teaching in Van Talks. And then when Rachel so graciously invited me to coach the 2019 speakers at Spark, another layer of wisdom came to me. And that is by being a male-bodied person bearing witness to the stories of women, I had to lament my privilege, my participation, my place in the systems that had done so much harm to these amazing people. And my job as a coach was to ask them to access that pain, to go to the hard place, the long dark night of the soul we talk about in storytelling, and the monomyth. Another thing that I had in my head, I learned from Joseph Campbell in my head, that Dr. Estes landed in my heart. On March 22nd, I wrote this stanza. I'm a pastor recovering hope in the goodest of newses, emerging like a sickness. Death to life is the way, no excuses to refuse you. In and out, right and wrong, get stuck in the tomb. All die, all live, all belong. Choosing the right way among the branches of our family tree takes us further from the fruit and the root. It does not compute a path to home. The ways left open, life, tree, fruit, ripe. I see a sword aflame, assume God's doom, but what if angels guard our birthright? Taste and know, evil and good, bitterest food, death and pain, again, again, again. Breathe, death, silently. Breathe beyond grief, released, breathe and know both. Colors of pain run into joy, golden scars, broken jars. Remember what's ours, our name, our song, our light. Love to give and get, our hope, our fear, our grief. A choice, a story, a life only ours. There's no one right way, can't ever be. There's only ever been one you and one me. So let's make some space and make some noise as we surf this chaos wave. Choose me, choose you in the both and way between. An old story sung into my bones. My ears couldn't hear, but my marrow knows. A story of us finding us beyond the loss, hurting together, the other dissolving into we who share this spirit breath until time becomes eternity. I'd become convinced that the way for me to make right my privilege, to do the penance, to align myself to all of the oppression that it took to buy the ease of my life. And it's in story that we each are brought to that place. In the sharing of our stories, in the living of our stories, in the embodying of our stories. My friend Dr. Mindy Nettifee has shown me that our voice is literally the place where our breath and our body, our spirit, in the Hebrew and the Greek and ancient languages, our ruach anuma, our spirit breath, touches our body at our vocal cords. And Dr. Nettifee weaves together this understanding of our myth, our legend, our body, the embodied trauma that we all feel from the shared hurt of oppression. On June 12th, 2020, I wrote, I'm a recovering pastor addicted to the drug. Eden's fruit, take and chew, long swallow. Rest and digest, self-actualize, past, good, evil, and doubt, no doubt, the goal, attained by a few. Climb to the top of a pyramid scheme, while those underneath your knees can't breathe. History's price, whitewashed and nice, growing unchecked like a cancer. No answer, but more of the same. Damn to repeat it, let me repeat it. Supremacy oppresses, inevitably. No way around it. We must face the pain, sit in the shit, heal the trauma, and feel. Slow down and feel all of it, all the good and evil too. The pain of life being lived is part of the whole. Shalom, hello, and goodbye to wholeness and peace. There is too much. Let me sum up a book in a phrase. Seek good yet get evil. Drawing lines divides people from voices and praise. Now love that gets messy, breaks hearts open, shatters time when you die to self-ego, murder spree, cracks open to light, movement of spirit, breath, breathe, life, death, live, stare, grief in the eye, make space for the pain, supremacy's drug tries to numb away. 'Cause interest builds on a debt. Jersey Shore and golden toilets flush away our mutual obsession. Once privilege built patrons and saints, now pissed away is Putin's possession. Rock bottom is here. Time to give up the hustle. There's no outrunning the rolling down of justice. Rock's finna cry out. There's one way out, that's through. Face the fire and burn away the scales from your eyes. Look to the light, fall on your knees and weep, 'cause you know the people you hate are you. Your fear of unworthy, creating unworthy, just so it's not you this time or the next, as long as you name more unworthy into being. Infinite inflation pops eventually. Best to know the time. Walk the line, narrow path between evil and good. Digest Eden's fruit and smile with the Buddha. Joke's on us. Life's meant for living, not taking. An oppression's a foundation made of sand. Supremacy built on stolen land. But life's meant for living and sharing and loving and caring. One for all life. Carefully choosing and using energy. Using in hope that betters, yet waiting. A faithful aligning of deeds and dreams, dancing and lamenting in season, the reason and receiver of beauty and truth. Breathe and observe. Make your choice, make sure it's yours, chosen for you. To feel more like you want because of joy, not proving or getting. Be free, truly free. Observe and breathe, and know that like oppression, liberation is never one way. I'm a recovering pastor. I was addicted. I always will be addicted to the drugs of codependence and supremacy, patriarchy, white privilege. But addicts can be in recovery and choose a different story. And in fact, we're all addicts. We're all telling a story about what we're addicted to, what we can't get enough of. And some of us are telling a story of numbing. Some of us are telling a story of being open. As Dr. Brené Brown says, awkward, brave, and kind. And when we get to rock bottom, from there, we can begin to tell a new story. A story of revolution, a story of connection, a story of change, a story of togetherness. And our path forward together is in our lamentation songs, in our naming of our grief. On the 27th of June, 2020, I wrote this stanza. I'm a recovering pastor, reclaiming lament as a season of a life worth living, examined by a searching moral inventory. Rock bottom dwelling shit sandwich time warp of rewriting loss into meaning by shading truth in colors of grief. Ninjas and thieves, I once saw these parts hard to believe. I tried so hard to pluck all the thorns from my roses, erasing the wholeness that cannot be contained in labels of good or safe or benign. Chaos gets messy, entropy grows, but for a moment the turbulent flow parts, the waters still, and dancing erupts in the tension woven between opposites, a drumhead throbbing with notes of grief and love and joy and sorrow and hope and despair and creation and destruction and life and death and 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 together we become a greater sum. The only way to make humans better is together, receiving each other as uniquely worthy individuals tied to a common goal of life on this planet. So I lament in the name of my ancestors. I lament in the name of humanity. I lament in the name of Christianity. I lament in the name of the colonizers. I lament in the name of the oppressors. I lament. In the name of the oppressed, I lament. In the name of the people, I lament. In the name of the land, I lament. In the name of wholeness, I lament. Let us lament together. Let us be free. Let us stand and sing. Name into being the meaning of your sorrow. Let us rejoice after grieving. Delight upon receiving the news. Lamentation songs are rites of belonging in the clan of the scar. All humans are wounded and wounding in season both, and the dance between the extremes. Sing we together of loss shared and given, grief flowing golden to mend the cracks in these vessels of clay. Now, let us pray to whomever we name, greater power, Allah, God, or Yahweh, universe or source of the switch for the Big Bang. With all of your voice and truth, ask for guidance. Rock bottoms of foundation, lament a beginning, not the end. It's about time for the human revolution to begin. My name is James T. Wood. I'm a recovering pastor. And it's my honor to join you in this revolution.